Here's my question for us for a few minutes together. How do we view difficulties? Do we view them purely as an inconvenience, something hard that we wish would just go away, something we're sick of? Or can we actually view them as something purposeful, worthwhile, productive even? What is it for us? I just want to share with us a few brief thoughts from an event that happened to Jesus and his disciples, and it's recorded for us in Mark's Gospel, chapter 4. Let me read the account for us. That day when evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was, in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the boat waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Jesus got up, rebuked the wind and the waves and said, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. Jesus said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." What's the problem here? Well, it feels as though the circumstances are going to overwhelm the disciples. What's actually going on here? Jesus leads his disciples through a storm to strengthen their faith. So 5 brief observations from this passage, which I hope will be of help to you. In the life of a follower of Jesus, things may get worse before they get better. It was Jesus who had said to his disciples, "Let us go across to the other side." It was in following Jesus such that the boat was nearly swamped. It was filled with water. These disciples, they grew up on this lake. They were fishermen. They knew how to fish on the lake. They knew what the weather was like, and yet they're absolutely terrified of this storm. It's going to consume and sink the boat. They may well lose their lives. And it's because they're following Jesus. Their lives got worse, actually, following Jesus before they got better. Perhaps that might be our experience if we call ourselves a follower of Jesus. Perhaps actually our lives have got harder before they've got better. Worse than that, sometimes it appears that God is asleep in the storm. That's what it says, doesn't it? But Jesus was asleep in the stern, lying on a cushion. In these days of this global pandemic of coronavirus, we can wonder the same thing as well, can't we? Is God asleep in this? Where is he? What's he doing? We may think that, well, okay, he created the world and he set our world in motion, aligned everything up and set it off, but now he's asleep at the wheel. Perhaps we think that at the moment. Worse than that, number 3, the disciples thought that Jesus didn't even care. That's what they said. "Teacher, don't you care that we're perishing?" The disciples thought that Jesus was neglecting them, sleeping on the job, that they were the ones in trouble, but actually he was okay, and it didn't really matter to him. Genuinely what they thought from Jesus' followers. And yet there is far more going on here than we appreciate. Because once they wake Jesus up, Jesus is able to bring a great calm. Jesus rebuked the wind and the waves and said, "Quiet, be still." The wind ceased and there was a great calm. It's Jesus who's able to bring a calm in the middle of a storm. He did it physically here, which revealed his identity as the Son of God. But actually Jesus is able to bring a calm within, an internal peace in the midst of storms. The Bible calls it a peace that passes all understanding, a peace that doesn't make sense. Isn't that good news for you and I? that actually in the midst of tremendous uncertainty, we can have a peace, we can have a calm. I don't know what sort of storm you're in. Perhaps a personal storm, perhaps a financial storm, perhaps a storm in your family, perhaps a storm at work, perhaps a storm as you worry about an economy, a recession, a pandemic being around for many years to come. Who knows? I don't know what your storm is. But Jesus can bring a great calm in the middle of the storm. That's wonderfully good news. We can have an internal peace, even though there's a storm outside. A peace which passes understanding, a peace which doesn't make sense, and yet which Jesus promises to us. Fourthly, we fear the world less by fearing God more. We fear the world less by fearing God more. The disciples were scared of the storm. It was genuinely frightening, and they thought they might lose their lives. But actually, with the wording of this passage, they were terrified when Jesus quietened the storm, because they saw an even greater power at work than the storm which brought the wind and the waves. They saw somebody speak to nature and overpower it, and it all be calm. It must have been an amazing moment. A great fear came upon them when Jesus spoke, an even greater fear than they had of the storm. Knowing Jesus and knowing his power can reduce our fear of the world around us. Even our fear of coronavirus, even our fear of death can be lessened by knowing Jesus Christ, by revering him and loving him. It was actually interesting. It was the lack of the disciples' faith that caused them to fear. The implication is that if they'd had a greater faith, a greater trust in Jesus, they would have feared the storm less. Knowing Jesus can reduce our fear and anxiety about the world around us and about the circumstances that we're in. When I say a faith, I don't mean a feeling that we somehow conjure up, something that we have to muster ourselves. Faith is confidence in what we do not see, and an assurance about what we've been told. Faith is a historically based confidence and assurance based on the truth and reliability of God's word. And number 5, the purpose of the storm was to reveal Jesus' identity. Those disciples, and it's wonderful to read and to see, they were different people when they arrived on that far shore than they were when they left. The storm served them. Isn't that amazing? A storm which threatened their lives actually worked together for their good, because they ended up on that shore with a clearer picture of who Jesus was, a greater trust in him, a greater calm through knowing him, a deeper joy from seeing him do his work. They were changed people through the storm. And wouldn't that be a wonderful thing, that we came out of this coronavirus more peaceful, more calm, with a deeper joy, a greater hope than we had when we went in, that actually coronavirus served us? Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Well, that's what happened to these disciples. May that be true for us as well. Coronavirus can serve us if it causes us to love and trust and know Jesus Christ more and enjoy all the fruits of that. The disciples thought they were subject to a fallen world which endangered their lives, but actually Jesus showed them that nature is subject to him, the God who can preserve life. So can I commend Jesus and the Bible to you as wonderful sources of hope in the midst of this storm. Thanks for listening.